120 billion. That's the number of individual pieces of packaging the beauty industry pumps out every single year.
It's just a massive number.
It really is. And if you go open your bathroom cabinet right now, you are probably staring at a graveyard of them.
Oh, absolutely.
You know the ones, the impulse buys, the discounted bundles, those serums you used maybe twice before just banishing them to the back of the shelf.
And we keep buying them, right? Because the packaging usually features a very reassuring little green leaf.
Right, exactly.
Or, an earth-toned label that practically whispers in your ear that you are making a responsible, ethical choice.
Yeah.
But eventually, those half-used bottles expire, they take up space, and they just head straight for the trash.
Which brings us to today. Welcome to today's deep dive. Today, we're exploring a genuinely eye-opening white paper on conscious entrepreneurship by a Swiss-Filipino entrepreneur named Dimi Ko.
It's a fantastic paper.
It really is. So our mission today is to look at the staggering waste crisis, specifically in the beauty and fashion industries. We're going to look at the massive problem with performative corporate badges.
Those little green leaves you just mentioned.
Yeah, exactly, those. And we'll talk about how you, along with small businesses, hold the actual systemic power to change the world.
So, okay, let's unpack this, because it really does start with that graveyard in your bathroom cabinet.
It does.
We think we're just making a quick, harmless purchase,
Oh.
but there is this invisible, incredibly wasteful machinery behind it.
What's fascinating here is that the bathroom cabinet graveyard is not a personal failing on your part.
Oh, really? Because I definitely feel guilty about it.
Right, we all do. But it is actually the deliberate, engineered result of an industry-wide rush to produce fast beauty and fast fashion.
Okay.
We are dealing with this illusion of responsibility, where companies use these performative certifications to basically mask incredible overproduction. So let's get into the mechanics of that waste, because the white paper dives straight into the ugly truth of it. To understand the solutions that Dimi Ko is proposing, you really have to grasp the incomprehensible scale of the environmental cost here.
Yeah, you have to see the big picture.
Right. So I mentioned the 120 billion units of packaging, but here's the part that genuinely shocked me. Up to 95% of those units end up entirely unrecycled.
95%. It's wild. They go straight to landfills or, they end up in the ocean.
It's sickening.
It is. And it's vital to understand why that recycling failure rate is so incredibly high.
Yeah.
It's not just because consumers are too lazy to find a blue bin. It is a fundamental design flaw.
Right. I was actually wondering about that. If it's plastic, why can't it just be melted down like a normal water bottle?
Well, think about a standard lotion pump.
Okay.
You throw that in a recycling bin, thinking you did a good deed. But that single pump contains a metal spring, a glass ball valve, and usually 3 different types of plastic. Yeah. A recycling facility cannot easily separate those components. Furthermore, a lot of beauty packaging, like lip balm tubes or sample-sized jars.
They're just too small.
Exactly. They are physically too small. They simply fall through the grates of the optical sorters at the recycling plants, and they just end up in the landfill pile anyway.
That makes so much sense, and it is incredibly frustrating. The burden is basically placed on you to recycle, but the product is inherently unrecyclable from the start.
Precisely.
And it gets more localized, too. The paper points out that in the U.S. alone, 7.9 billion rigid plastic containers are manufactured every single year just for personal care and cosmetics.
And fast fashion is right there with it,
Oh, yeah.
generating 92 million tons of textile waste annually,
92 million.
every year, and with less than 1% of that being recycled.
Less than 1%. When you look at the mechanics behind those numbers, it really reveals a deeply broken model.
It does. Across these industries, the mandate has just been to produce more. Brands are jumping on the bandwagon simply to sell, flooding the market with duplicates or slightly cheaper versions of existing products just to capture a tiny sliver of market share.
And here's the kicker. Instead of actually fixing this monumental design flaw, a lot of companies are focusing entirely on optics.
Right.
The white paper points out how it has become this contest of badges. Companies proudly showing off their B Corp seals, their sustainability stamps, their little certificates of approval.
Yeah, the optics.
It's like someone posting gym selfies just to get likes, without ever actually picking up a weight. They want the credit for the lifestyle without doing the heavy lifting.
That gym selfie analogy captures it perfectly. The certificate becomes the entire story. In fact, in the European Union, a massive study found that over 50% of environmental claims made by companies were vague or downright misleading.
Over 50%. So it's basically a coin toss.
Exactly. It is textbook greenwashing. The focus has shifted from actually being responsible to simply being seen as responsible.
But let me push back on this for a second.
Sure.
Because it sounds great to sit here and critique the badges, but I'm a busy consumer.
We all are.
Right. If I have 15 minutes to shop after work and I am staring at a wall of 50 different shampoos, I do not have the time to audit a company's community partnerships or investigate their supply chain.
No, of course not.
I need those badges to make a quick decision. Aren't performative badges better than absolutely nothing? I mean, how are you, the consumer, supposed to know who is actually doing the work?
It's a very fair challenge, and it's exactly why the white paper draws a really hard line between performative responsibility and lived responsibility.
Okay, break that down for me.
So performative responsibility is the quick fix for the busy consumer you just described. It's PR-driven donations, glossy annual reports, or, writing a check from a distance so you can slap a badge on your website and ease the consumer's guilt.
It's basically treating sustainability as a marketing expense.
Yes, exactly. Lived responsibility, however, is about presence. It means embedding values into your daily operations.
So how does that look on the shelf?
Well, it's the difference between a brand donating a fraction of a percent of profits to an ocean cleanup charity while still pumping out 1 billion unrecyclable plastic lotion pumps.
Right.
Versus a brand fundamentally redesigning their formulation and packaging so the plastic bottle doesn't exist in the first place. You don't need to look for a badge if the product itself visibly rejects the wasteful norm.
Okay, that distinction makes total sense. But it still feels a bit, I don't know, David and Goliath.
How so?
Well, if these massive corporations are just using misleading greenwashing to mask billions of units of waste, it can feel like the problem is just way too big to solve.
It can feel overwhelming for sure.
But the white paper argues that the real power to change this doesn't actually come from massive conglomerates. It comes from small and medium enterprises, or SMEs, and from your own wallet.
Yeah, we tend to underestimate SMEs because they don't have the massive PR budgets to buy those billboards and magazine spreads.
Right.
But SMEs are not just businesses. They're vital, living ecosystems. Globally, they account for 90% of all businesses.
90%. That's huge.
And they provide more than 50% of global employment. In Asia, they represent nearly 90% of company entities and supply between 50 and 80% of all jobs.
Wow.
And in emerging economies, they contribute about 33% of GDP and 45% of formal jobs.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting, because the white paper highlights the actual mechanics of how this money moves, and it uses this incredible study from researchers in Austin, Texas.
Oh, the bookstore study.
Yes. They looked at bookstores.
Yeah.
And they found that for every $100 spent at local bookstores, $45 was generated in local economic activity.
Right.
But when that exact same $100 was spent at a national chain, it only generated $13 locally. Across the U.S., local retailers recirculate 48% of their revenue locally, compared to just 14% for the big chains.
And we should probably explain how that multiplier effect actually happens, because it's not just magic.
No, it's very practical.
When you spend $100 at a national chain, that profit is immediately digitized and wired to a corporate headquarters out of state, where it is distributed to global shareholders. It essentially vanishes from your community instantly.
Right. It's just gone. But when you spend it at an SME, that owner uses your $100 to pay a local web developer, or they hire a local accountant, or they sponsor the neighborhood Little League team.
Exactly.
The money bounces around the community several times before it finally leaves.
That is the multiplier effect of money. So if SMEs, which again are 90% of the global economy, adopt lived responsibility, the ripple effect isn't just a drop in the bucket. It becomes immediate systemic change.
It creates a localized ecosystem.
Yes, an ecosystem of fair pay, sustainable sourcing, and community reinvestment. And the best part is, consumers are catching on to this.
Really?
Yeah, a 25 survey shows that 77% of consumers now prefer to buy from companies engaged in real corporate social responsibility.
So basically, every dollar you spend is essentially a vote for the world you want to live in.
That's a great way to put it.
But let's take that massive systemic economic power and apply it directly back to the beauty industry's 120 billion unit waste problem. What does this actually look like in practice?
Well, the white paper uses Demico's own brand, Dumois, as a case study for this exact approach.
Right, and her approach with the Dumois brand is basically a total rejection of what the industry calls the endless SKUs model.
Yeah, and let's define that, because SKU is essentially just a unique item barcode.
The stock keeping unit, yeah.
Right. The endless SKUs model is the reason why you walk into a store and see an entire shelf full of 20 different moisturizers from the exact same brand that basically do the exact same thing.
And the reason companies do that isn't to give you better skin, is it?
Not at all. It is physical warfare for shelf space.
Just to block out the little guy.
Exactly. If I make 20 variations of a cream, I take up 5 feet of the aisle, which physically blocks my competitors from even being seen. It is entirely about market dominance, and it creates immense, unnecessary waste.
But instead of participating in that toxic model, Demi Co. created what she calls smart beauty solutions.
Yes.
These are multifunctional, efficient, versatile formulas. The goal is to design a single product that does the job of 3 or 4 different bottles in your cabinet.
And from a formulation standpoint, I have to say this is incredibly difficult to do, which is why most brands just avoid it entirely.
Because it's easier to just sell 4 bottles.
Exactly. Usually you are sold a toner, an essence, a vitamin C serum, and a barrier cream. Cosmetic chemists often separate these ingredients simply to sell you 4 products instead of 1.
That is so frustrating to hear as a consumer.
But Demico Co.'s approach involves utilizing advanced formulation techniques like microencapsulation or stabilizing volatile actives within a specific moisturizer base so that the ingredients don't clash.
So they actually work together.
Right. You get the efficacy of 4 products in one single, highly deliberate package.
Which obviously saves you, the consumer, a ton of time and money, and it drastically cuts down on the physical packaging waste.
Massively.
But look, if we are being brutally honest about traditional capitalism here,
Let's do it.
this sounds like a terrible business model.
Really?
Yeah. You have a beauty founder who is essentially telling her customers to buy fewer products. She is actively limiting her own shelf space. How does a company survive when its core philosophy is basically buy less of our stuff?
If we connect this to the bigger picture, it completely embodies the white paper's concept of mindfulness over novelty.
Mindfulness over novelty, I like that.
It is an intentional pause to ask, what are we actually creating? Does it serve a purpose beyond our own corporate ego?
It's stepping off the hamster wheel of having to launch a new miracle product every 3 weeks just to stay relevant on social media.
Precisely. And financially, it works brilliantly because efficiency has its own massive margins.
Oh, because you aren't paying for all that extra production.
Exactly. Operating without the bloat of overproduction, without the astronomical marketing costs required to push endless novelty, a business like Dumois remains highly profitable.
That makes a lot of sense.
But instead of that profit just pooling at the top to pay for a CEO's third yacht, it allows the business to fund scholarships, community programs, and conscious consumption awareness. It proves that profitability and profound social impact can absolutely coexist.
Okay, so we have this powerful model of an SME doing things right. We understand the formulation, the economics, and the waste reduction. But how do we scale this exact mindset?
That's the challenge.
Right. How do we take this intentionality beyond just one brand? The white paper draws on the founder's Swiss heritage to propose a new, universal framework for business integrity. It's called the Switzerland Honesty Approach.
Yeah, in Switzerland, there is a cultural foundation built on profound trust. People routinely board trains without scanning tickets.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and there are honesty stores that operate entirely without cashiers.
Which, let's be real, sounds completely utopian. If you are used to turnstiles, security guards, and, receipt checkers at the exit of every big box store, the idea of an honor system in cutthroat global capitalism sounds incredibly naive.
It does sound naive until you look at the economics of trust.
Yeah.
The system in Switzerland works because the responsibility is internalized for the collective well-being, not policed for control.
Not police. Okay.
And in business, policing is incredibly expensive.
Oh, I hadn't thought of that.
Think about how much capital massive corporations spend on compliance departments,
Yeah.
loss prevention, legal teams to defend greenwashing claims,
Oh, man, yeah.
and HR teams to manage the high turnover of miserable employees.
That is a fascinating angle. So by fostering internalized trust, you actually lower your overhead. It's the difference between driving the speed limit because your Maps app just warned you there's a traffic camera ahead versus driving the speed limit because you genuinely care about keeping the kids in your neighborhood safe.
That's a brilliant analogy.
Thanks. Because one requires the state to spend millions on cameras, but the other is essentially free because it's based on shared values.
And that shared value system is exactly what DMECO formalizes into the 4 pillars of conscious entrepreneurship.
The 4 pillars.
Right. It is essentially a blueprint for how you build a company from the ground up so that trust is baked in rather than added as a PR stunt later.
So if I'm starting a conscious business tomorrow, how do I actually apply these pillars? Because the white paper suggests I can't just slap a giving back sticker on my website at the end of a profitable year.
Exactly. You start with the first pillar, which is purpose before profit.
Purpose before profit.
Yes. You anchor your entire business model in a clear why. When a company is driven solely by quarterly profit margins, it is incredibly fragile to market shifts.
Because the goalpost is always moving.
Right. But when anchored in purpose, you build deep resilience and fierce loyalty from your employees.
And then, when it comes time to actually design my product, I would lean into the second pillar, which is impact-driven innovation.
Exactly.
This is the smart beauty solutions we just talked about. I am not allowed to just create a generic shampoo and put it in a pink bottle because pink is trending on TikTok.
And you can't.
My product has to solve a real, tangible problem and reduce waste.
Then, as your business grows and you need to manufacture that product, you hit the third pillar, which is equity and fairness.
And this is where the true test of lived responsibility happens, isn't it?
It is. It is not just about having a ping pong table for your head office staff.
Or free snacks in the break room.
Right. It is about how you treat your raw material suppliers and ensuring the factory workers making your product are paid living wages. A fair supply chain multiplies trust exponentially.
And finally, what about the money? If I am profitable, the fourth pillar is giving as DNA.
Yes, giving is DNA.
The white paper is very strict that this has to be structural. It is built directly into the business model from day one, like a fixed expense, not as an afterthought when you happen to have surplus cash.
This raises an important question, though.
What's that?
How do legacy businesses successfully transition from a culture of verification, chasing those performative badges, to this new culture of internalized trust? Because a reckoning is coming and is being driven entirely by demographics.
You're talking about Gen Z and Gen Alpha.
Yes, I am. These are highly skeptical digital natives. They have grown up utterly inundated with marketing, and they possess an almost superhuman ability to spot greenwashing instantly.
It's almost scary how fast they are.
They do not just request authenticity, they demand it.
It's so true. You see it all the time now. A major brand will post a glossy, produced video about their new sustainable initiative, and within an hour, a 19-year-old on social media will pull up the company's tax records.
Right. Cross-reference their supply chain history.
Exactly. Find a contradictory statement the CEO made 5 years ago and go incredibly viral exposing the hypocrisy. You really cannot hide behind a PDF report anymore.
You can't. We are entering an age of radical transparency, and the white paper makes a bold prediction here. The businesses that survive this coming era will not be the ones with the most certificates, the loudest marketing, or the biggest shelf space.
Who will it be then?
They will be the ones with the clearest, quietest sincerity. And SMEs, because they are agile and deeply value-driven by their founders, are uniquely positioned to lead this charge.
So what does this all mean for us? Let's synthesize this whole journey.
Let's do it.
We started by looking at the shocking reality of 120 billion units of beauty packaging and the mechanical reasons why 95% of it can never be recycled.
The mixed plastics, the small sizes.
Right. We looked at how large corporations use performative sustainability badges to mask that staggering waste. But then we uncovered where the real power lies, the massive economic multiplier effect of small and medium enterprises.
The Austin Bookstore study?
Yes. We explored how DMECO's Dumois brand proves that cleverly formulated smart beauty solutions can dramatically reduce waste while actively funding communities.
By rejecting the endless SKUs model.
Exactly. And it's all rooted in the trust-based Switzerland honesty approach, lowering the cost of doing business by building equity and giving into the company's DNA from day one.
It really is a comprehensive, actionable blueprint for shifting away from mindless transaction toward genuine transformation.
And the most important piece of that blueprint is you. You, the listener, are the crucial final step in this ripple effect.
Absolutely.
The dollars you spend, whether you are buying a book at a local independent bookstore so the money stays in your neighborhood, or choosing a multifunctional skincare serum over a bundle of cheap duplicates, your dollars literally dictate the ecosystems that survive and thrive.
If we recognize that money is one of the greatest forces for change, then every purchase is a profound responsibility.
Before we wrap up, I want to go back to that shift toward radical transparency we just discussed. I know you had a final thought on that.
I do, and it is something for all of us to mull over as we watch the market shift over the next few years. If Gen Z and Gen Alpha possess this uncompromising demand for radical transparency, and they can instantly spot and expose greenwashing,
Which we know they can.
exactly what is going to happen to the massive, slow-moving corporate giants in the next decade?
That's a great question.
When the fast beauty and fast fashion empires can no longer hide their overproduction behind purchase sustainability badges, will they be able to restructure their massive supply chains in time? Or will they simply collapse under the crushing weight of their own transparency?
Wow, it makes you look at that graveyard of expired skincare in your bathroom cabinet a whole lot differently, doesn't it?
It really does.
The power to stop that cycle isn't waiting on a corporate board to do the right thing. It is literally in our hands right now. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. Keep asking questions, keep voting with your wallet, and we will catch you next time.